Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we have an update on Jeffrey Epstein. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to scroll down here to subscribe to our email newsletter, which as soon as I get home tomorrow, I'll be back to sending out every weekend once again. And also to find us on minds.com, because of course we're no longer on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are on YouTube, of course, but we mainly are using minds.com/the Conscious Resistance Network. Check us out on there. So, you guys by now are very well aware that I've been following the Jeffrey Epstein case for a number of years, but more specifically for the last 7 or 8 months, starting with some news reports and then our documentary Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, which, by the way, thanks to you guys, has over 300,000 views, and I very much appreciate that. And you also see this report right here, where just a few weeks ago, the federal judge, Kenneth Mara, he ruled that the prosecutors in Florida back in 2005, when Epstein's case was first brought against him for the molesting of more than 40, potentially more than 100 young girls in Palm Beach County and in New York, where he had a home, and pretty much everywhere he lived, that the sweetheart deal that he received in Florida by this guy, Acosta, who's the current labor secretary, that deal violated the law. So now we're dealing with the repercussions of that, and we have some new news. First off, House Democrats, as reported by the Miami Herald just a couple days ago, are now calling for the Jeffrey Epstein case to be reopened. And, it's interesting because this is being led by Florida Democrats Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who you guys know, she was kind of guilty of her own corruption during the Democratic National Convention and during the 2016 election season. I actually confronted her at the airport. You can find that video on our YouTube channel. But now her and some other Democrats are calling for Epstein to be investigated. And this is, I would say, mainly a political move because, well, they're Democrats calling out Republicans. But the interesting thing is, as you guys know, that Epstein was connected to Democrats, Republicans, the Clintons, the Trumps, the Dershowitzes, the Kevin Spaceys, the Prince Andrews, lots of people from around the world, royalty, Hollywood, political figures, etc. And again, this comes after Judge Kenneth Mara says that the deal was illegal because it violated Epstein's victims' rights. And so, essentially, they have 15 days, which it will be like, I think, about mid-March, business days. Of course, you don't count the weekends, until they decide what this means. So the judge has said it's illegal, but we don't know exactly if that means Epstein's going to be retried or if he will be open to new charges, which would be the best case scenario. But the Democrats are saying, we urge the Department of Justice to reopen the non-prosecution agreement to allow for a thorough investigation of these heinous crimes. And so that's a little bit of an update. And then we also have this, where now Alan Dershowitz, who is one of Epstein's high-profile, high-powered attorneys, who's connected to Harvard University, and if you guys have watched some of my previous videos, I've talked about how Epstein himself is also like an honorary member of Harvard because he donates a lot of money to them. So Harvard is kind of swimming in some of these individuals who've been accused of pedophilia and of sex crimes and things like that. Now, Alan Dershowitz is apparently suggesting that press access in the hearing, which is coming up starting tomorrow, the 6th, which is Wednesday, March 6th, that the hearing should be closed to the press. Now, the interesting thing about this is Alan Dershowitz, as I said, has been accused by some of the women of also being involved in sex crimes, and he has adamantly denied this. However, he at first said he never received a massage, and then that later turned out to be false, and he admitted, okay, I did get a massage, but it was with my family present, and nothing, nothing happened. He claims that he was laying on his stomach and that he never turned around, so he didn't see anything or didn't witness anything, things like that. But now Dershowitz wrote a letter to the U.S. District Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit last week saying that the media should be excluded from the proceeding because his oral arguments, which again begins tomorrow, on behalf of Epstein could contain sensitive information that has been under seal. So previously, he's called for unsealing some of these documents because he wanted to clear his supposed good name. Now he's saying, hey, look, I'm just letting you know there's going to be sensitive things talked about in these oral arguments and the press shouldn't be allowed in. And it says, if the hearing is closed during his lawyer's arguments, it would represent the latest in a long history of successful efforts to keep details of Epstein's sex crimes sealed. And as I said, Dershowitz is a professor emeritus at Harvard, constitutional law expert, and criminal defense attorney who represented Epstein and helped him get this sweetheart deal. And the arguments are scheduled to begin tomorrow. And I don't know how long they're going to go on. I really don't know what to expect. As you guys are well aware, I was in Palm Beach County in December for a kind of side trial, a related case. And in that case, as with most cases with Epstein, they settled out of court before anything could actually be brought to the public light. But now this is the big thing. This ruling by the judge, which has said that Epstein's agreement was illegal. This is our best chance. This is the public's best chance, and the women, the young girls who are now adult women, this is their best chance for any type of justice if it goes forward. And the legal briefing, which was filed in December by the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press and supported by 32 other media companies, including the New York Times, Washington Post, Dow Jones, Fox News, Gannett, Politico, Reveal Center for Investigative Reporting, and the Tribune Publishing Co., is now getting a lot of mainstream press, actually. And this is the interesting thing the question I want to pose to you guys. I'm actually working on a written version of this video right here that I'm going to share, and that will be distributed through our website and in the anti-media and some other places. But the question that I'm essentially wondering here is, why is this happening now? After the truth about Epstein has been known by anybody who's been paying attention and by the independent alternative media for at least, since the beginning, it was clear. I mean, it was quite clear that this was a cover-up, but at least, let's say, the last 5 years, people have been paying attention to this. And then my documentary came out in early October, and then the Miami Herald did an investigation that got a lot of mainstream press, and now Epstein's name is everywhere again. It could be that it's just such an obvious case of corruption and cover-up that they can't ignore it, or the question I want to pose is the political establishment, and again, Epstein's connected to both the Democratic and Republican political establishment, is the political establishment preparing to throw Epstein under the bus? We know that Epstein had these sex parties on his private island where there were rumors of them being secretly recorded. We at least know 100% that the women involved say that he would debrief them after he had them have sex with these various powerful, influential people. He would ask them, what were they into? What did they talk about? And it seems like he was gathering data on all kinds of people. So we have long believed that the reason he's protected is because he has so much information on so many different people. We also know that during Epstein's investigation, he did cop a plea deal with the FBI in order to try to save his butt, so we don't really know what exactly that was related to. Some people think it was related to financial crimes and things he may have learned while working at the financial firm Bear Stearns, but we really don't know. Perhaps Epstein started to, sing his song to the FBI, and the people who stand to be exposed are worried about that, so now they're ready to bring him down. I don't know. I'm skeptical of the fact that all of a sudden the mainstream press is starting to talk about it. And of course, Dershowitz claims that he is not trying to seal the hearing. He says, "Let me be crystal clear. I want the hearing to be open to the press, but I also want my lawyer to be able to tell the court what's in the sealed emails that prove I was framed for money. It's the other side that sealed the material. Let them unseal it so the world can see the truth," he wrote on March 2nd. And he also accused Julie Brown, the journalist for the Miami Herald, of distorting the truth. Said, "Why not ask for everything to be unsealed? Why are your motions so redacted?" He says, "We want everything unsealed. Why didn't you try to reach me before publishing your error-filled screed?" So there's a lot of back and forth going on right now of people saying that Dershowitz saying that the Herald was completely wrong, and the Herald saying, no, we're trying to expose this. Dershowitz is doing everything he can to fight it. And of course, it's important to remember that this man, Alex Acosta, who again was working in Palm Beach County and is now Trump's labor secretary, that he specifically was meeting with Epstein's attorney. So he can try to say, as he has when he was being nominated, that, well, we did the best we could. We got him to register as a lifetime sex offender, and he paid out millions of dollars to some of the victims, and we didn't have a lot of strong evidence, so this is the best we could hope for. And maybe that holds up in theory, but the reality is much different, because when you look in the documents, it's clear that he was meeting with Epstein's attorneys to craft this sweetheart deal while lying to the victims and telling them that they would let them know if they ended up making a deal. And then one day, all of a sudden, the victims were notified, oh, look, we made a deal. And so this is why Judge Kenneth Mara is now saying this violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act, which basically says that you have to consult with victims of sex crimes and various crimes like this before making a deal. Interesting little last piece here. A letter was written to the New York Times editorial board by attorneys actually representing Epstein. And this is what I mean, is like they're making a pretty strong effort to have their voices heard, because I think they're worried that this is all about to come out. So this was just yesterday. Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys, they're claiming that he received a fair plea deal. And they're saying this is in response to an editorial published by the Times called The Cowardly Labor Secretary, which was calling out Alex Acosta for working with Epstein's attorneys. And this is what they said: your editorial conclusions are in profound conflict with reality as we, Jeffrey Epstein's current and former lawyers, knew it. When he was United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida in 2007, Alexander Acosta oversaw a plea deal involving charges of solicitation for prostitution involving young women. Your underlying premise is that Mr. Acosta had capitulated and not filed federal charges because Mr. Epstein had a, quote, high-priced defense team. This was categorically denied by the Southern District's then First Assistant Jeffrey H. Sloman in an op-ed article in the Miami Herald on February 15th. So let me just go on. It's basically just them saying, like, this is incorrect, and they're just straight up lying right here. I mean, just to be clear, they're lying. They don't even mention the fact that they had met with Acosta. They just try to play the same old game that this was the best that we could get, and said this case lacked the credible and compelling proof that is required by federal criminal statutes. Dude, the Herald found more than 80 women willing, to talk about the things involved and that Epstein forced them to do, and that Josiane Maxwell and various other people, those unnamed co-conspirators who also were part of this non-prosecution agreement that Epstein got, forced these women into various sex acts. So what they say here is the court reflected the absence of evidence that Epstein used the internet, traveled to a location far from his home for the purpose of having illegal sex, commercially trafficked women to others, engaged in forced fraud, and used drugs or alcohol to entice women to come to his house to exchange sexual massages for money, possessed child pornography, or in other ways violated the federal law. So they're basically saying, look, we found no evidence of this. And this is a key part here, with a key part of their lying. The number of young women involved in the investigation has been vastly exaggerated. There was, quote, no international sex trafficking operation, and there was never evidence that Mr. Epstein hosted sex parties at his home. So the lawyers are saying that basically they're just calling all the women liars right there. Finally, Mr. Epstein has gone to prison and made enormous monetary settlements relying on his negotiated agreement. He is entitled to finality like every other defendant. Okay, yeah, but then you look into this and he went to prison. Well, that prison should be in quotes, because he went to the county jail where he slept for 8 hours a day, and the rest of the days, for the rest of the 16 hours, he was allowed to leave on work release, where he was at his office where he had the local sheriffs, through taxpayer money, guarding him, and he was also allowed to leave and receive visitors. They actually kept a visitor log, and so some of the same people that were his co-conspirators, and maybe even young women while he was supposedly on work release from his, quote, prison sentence, visited him. So Kenneth Starr, Martin G. Weinberg, Jack Goldberger, Liliane Sanchez, these lawyers are liars. And, I guess that's kind of not a good thing to say to a high-profile lawyer, high-priced attorney, but I don't have any money. What are they going to do? They're liars. Let's just be real about it. These people are liars, and they're using the New York Times. And the New York Times should also be ashamed for just running this opinion piece without countering it with facts. So hopefully, I haven't had the time to look. I really don't pay too much attention to the New York Times, but hopefully somebody countered that. So I'm working on writing a response to all this and putting it in written form for those who prefer written articles, so we can get this information out. And again, I posed that question: is the political establishment preparing to throw Jeffrey Epstein under the bus? Why now are they all of a sudden willing to start talking about this? And obviously they're still trying to cover it up, but why is the mainstream press fighting when we've known this information for years? They're acting like it was just revealed by the Miami Herald investigation. And I'm thankful for Julie Brown and for the Miami Herald for what they did. But let's not pretend like they exposed this. This has been going on for quite some time, and many of us have been talking about it. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think below. I return home early in the morning back to the US after 5 weeks on the road, and I'm going to be digging further into this. And I will look in and see how long the this process is expected to go on. If anybody out there is interested in funding me to go back to Florida, I would be more than willing to go there to cover this next stage of the Jeffrey Epstein saga to make sure that we get the actual real news and that we don't have to depend on the corporate media to tell us what's going on there. So if you're interested in that, feel free to email me at derrick@theconsciousresistance.com, or you can sign up on our Patreon and things like that. All of those funds will be used to go towards this trip for the moment. And yeah, until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.